Now, the whole thing is way too preachy to be enjoyable or even.
Oh, dude, she's actually the the shift is complete. We've now reached the I don't know why this feminist movie with a feminist director about feminism was preaching about feminism.
That's already ridiculous. I'm sorry, but that is ridiculous. Like, it was extremely preachy. Anybody who saw that movie knew that it was preachy as fuck. I just gave what would be a sophisticated film bro analysis about why that became problematic, Vaush, and I don't believe that I lost any like lefty feminist credentials doing so. It's not an example, of Krystal Ball like turning to the fucking right. Jesus Christ, right off the bat. I'm like, come on, bro.
Yeah, and yeah, the film is undeniably preachy. It's so preachy that it's self-aware about how preachy it is. And by the way, movies with a very obvious political message, they can have a strong message without being preachy. A great example of that is what's considered to be the greatest American film of all time, Citizen Kane. I mean, Citizen Kane is not a subtle movie. You know, you watch that film and it's very obvious what the director is saying, the point that he's making about, you know, how capitalism can consume you and rob you of the innocence that you once had as a child.
Shout out to Mankiewicz.
Yeah, exactly. You know, it's a great film, but it's not subtle, right? But that movie doesn't end with the main character, you know, turning to the screen to lecture you for 5 minutes about what the message is. The film understands that due to its lack of subtlety, the audience gets the point. It's not very hard. It's kind of hard to miss the point, frankly. And that's how I felt with Barbie. And again, Barbie is self-aware about how preachy it is, but I still found it to be grating.
You liked Parasite? Yeah. Dude, she was like, yeah, I liked Squid Game, which was extremely subtle with its anti-rich, anti-capitalist message. But this movie, with its feminist stuff,
How about the fact that Squid Games was actually fun to watch? It was engaging. It was gripping. It was exciting. And of course, it's not like There Will Be Blood is a masterpiece. Of course, you're gonna walk away thinking, "Fuck capitalism. The oil is fucking like this is ripping this man apart. Like, you should not become an oil baron." This is decidedly anti-capitalist. It was based off of a book by Upton Sinclair, who was a just straight up socialist. But it doesn't beat you over the head. It still has nuance. It is the pinnacle of competent filmmaking, right? This is ridiculous. This is absurd.
You could watch the movie Parasite and have no idea what the political message of that film is and still thoroughly enjoy it just on the level of entertainment. Anyone could enjoy that movie. It's a intensely enjoyable, entertaining film. It just also happens to have a quite deep political message. But again, you can watch that film and just enjoy it as a piece of entertainment without ever getting the political message or even understanding it if you're just, not thinking about that necessarily while you're watching it. Barbie, it's impossible to have that experience because, like I said, they literally lecture you at the end of the film about what the point they're trying to make is. And that's where it crosses the line into being preachy. No, Parasite is also not a subtle movie, admittedly, but compared to Barbie, oh God, it's incredibly subtle.
Even to really be very effective as propaganda, it's sort of like AI wrote a screenplay based on 2010's white feminism, not to mention the radicalism level.
The feminism in the film wasn't white feminism? White feminism is a derogatory term for uplifting girl boss feminist empowerment that only really benefits white women and ignores the experiences of non-white women. The feminist messaging in the film didn't really have any racial coding to it. It was just pretty broad stuff about the hypocrisies of the patriarchy and the expectations women experience. There wasn't anything white feminism about it. And also, it wasn't 2010s feminism either. The messaging was straight out of basic critical theory feminism. It was right out of like very basic second wave stuff. It wasn't I don't know what the only mention of race, really, apart from the smallpox and natives comparison, was when the dad, who you only see twice in the whole movie, the dad of the the real humans that Barbie interacts with, is a white guy trying to learn Spanish, which was just like cute and funny. Like, he was on the couch playing with Duolingo. That was just cute. I mean, I don't think that was I don't think that was racialized. And when the girl called her white savior Barbie, yeah. The funny thing is, the one time there was a point where a white woman did a feminism at a non-white woman, she immediately gets called white savior Barbie in a self-aware bit there. Like, the movie's like aware of the tropes that it's deliberately or not deliberately playing off of. Krystal is completely off here. This is just So to be clear, Krystal lies nonstop to appease a conservative audience on Breaking Point's. Breaking Point's audience is exclusively populist conservative. There is not like some secret hidden contingent of leftist feminists who watch it. So, she's just like grifting towards them.
Is firmly set on safe for the army of brands that are raking in money off of this crap. It's a dumb person's idea of a smart move.
Army of brands? It's Mattel.
That's also not true. They did put a Chevy commercial in the middle of the movie.
Yes, the movie of a Mattel product that features Mattel in it is profitable for Mattel. Okay.
A liberal's idea of a revolutionary message. One might ask why Mattel would choose to associate with the movie that was basically made by someone who clearly hates their product.
Oh, dude, she's actually doing the Ben Shapiro thing. This is just conservative grifting. This bitch. Nothing about the movie.
Okay, Vaush, that was not a nice word to use to describe Krystal Ball. I don't think she would appreciate that. Yeah, that was like I don't know. I had to respond to that. Gavin's not here. I don't know what else to say. What do I finger wag and say that? I don't understand. I don't understand where Vaush's vitriol towards Krystal comes to, because I do have to point out that he was extremely charitable to her when he was on her show, when they invited him on KKF, and he told her that his only criticisms for her were really involved those of Sagar, right? And even though he already called her like a liar and like all kinds of crazy shit on his podcast when he was sitting down across from her, he did not bring any of that up. So for him to just now be like extremely vitriol, I just don't understand. I don't understand, Vaush. Why do you give people like us a good shake and not Krystal Ball? Krystal Ball is far more reasonable than I am, that's for sure. I would say that she's far more worthy of being taken seriously than we are, and given the benefit of the doubt. But he has absolutely no charity for her in this clip. And I'm also not inclined to say that I may have agreed with the point that he'd made leading up to that, because he was rude.
Yeah, that was definitely rude. That being said, I do disagree with Krystal's point. I don't think that in any way I'm just confused. I feel like people saw a different movie than I did, because I don't think in any way the film reflects some sort of like hatred for the brand in question.
The opposite.
The opposite. Yeah,
nostalgia, intense
it's like a love letter to the Barbie product, while poking fun at the product at the same time.
The problematic element.
Yeah, but it's definitely not like a self-hating Barbie movie where it's just like Barbie sucks and is a fixture of patriarchal control. Like that is a very, very surface level analysis of the film. And I think to come away with that just is like completely missing the point.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like the whole point was that like what I liked about the movie was that it wasn't that way. Like I had a lot of criticisms of the movie. Like when I walked out, I said that it gave me like, if Teen Vogue made a Hallmark Channel movie, just about Barbie, because like with an amazing budget and like a real specific creative vision, but just like the fucking like hamminess of it sometimes a little bit cringe. For sure, ham-fisted, whatever. But at the end of the day, there was a heart to it, right? There was a heartbeat to that movie. It was somebody's, statement, right? It was Greta Gerwig's statement. And do I think that maybe she's been, hanging out with some neolib? Sure. Do I think that maybe like she's on a radical page of feminism? No. Do I think that it's as based of a film as a lot of people have pointed it out? No. Do I think it would have been tight if they would have made some actual difficult political stances about feminism instead of looking for the easy congratulations? There was no standing up for trans Barbie, right? There wasn't a ton of representation from the Barbies, let's be real, right? And I know they joked about that and they tried to keep that authenticity, but it's just like, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Also, just to be clear, my objections to the film aren't political at all. I do think it's the like kind of brand of feminism that the film represents is a fairly basic brand of feminism. Like I don't really think it comes to any shocking conclusions that weren't reached by the kind of like 2014 era BuzzFeed feminism that Krystal Ball is referencing here. Like I don't really think it goes much further beyond that, and I don't really think that its analysis is as smart as it thinks it is. But just to be clear, my objection to the film has nothing to do with its politics. Even if it was a super cringy neoliberal movie, personally, I don't give a fuck. I don't go to movies for a political message. I already am pretty firm in my political stances. I don't need a film to convince me otherwise. So for me, my issues with the film had more to do with the presentation of the ideas, not so much the ideas itself or the politics itself. Like I said, I don't really care if this film represents the brand of feminism that I most align with. It could have been more neoliberal than mine. It could have been just as radical as mine. I don't really care about that. To me, it's more about the way they presented those ideas, which I did think was a little bit heavy-handed. And again, you made a great analogy earlier to the film Don't Look Up.
Right, which is what I was going to.
Yeah, and that's a movie that obviously Zach and I totally agree with the politics of, but both thought that it was also similarly incredibly heavy-handed.
Indicates that it hates the this is, dude, she's like Frankensteining a conservative argument together where like there is no reason anybody would come away from this movie with the conclusion that it hates Barbie unless they're reading it from a brain dead conservative perspective. But she's also trying to say that feminism was basic and wasn't revolutionary enough. She's cobbling together arguments that are inconsistent with each other. Anybody who recognizes that the feminism in the movie is relatively safe would not accuse it of hating Barbie because they realized the feminist message in the movie was in line with the target messaging for Barbie. And anyone who argues the other way around, that it was super radical feminism, would then go on to argue that it hates its own product. She's trying to like cut and paste all of the different arguments she could use against it, regardless of their consistency.
The answer is obvious in the film because it never strays beyond the surface level consumer-friendly critique. Basically, yes, we realize Barbie's...
So it's consumer-friendly, but it also hates the product? Like, think about what she's saying for a second. These arguments don't make sense with each other. It was a basic, predictable movie. It was safe. It was white girl 2010's feminism, but also it hates Barbie. So why would Mattel associate with it, even though it was made to benefit the brand? It like that, no consistency, just spewing out whatever the she has on our mind.
His body and ethos was unobtainable. Well, we fixed it now. So you can go out, buy our products for your little girls, and it's basically like you're fighting the patriarchy.
See, again, why would she just say that while arguing that Mattel shouldn't have associated with the movie because the movie clearly hates their products?
I also disagree with Krystal Ball's review for the most part. In some sense, I don't know, like any film degree or film review, right? Like you have parts that I agree with what she's saying and parts that I disagree. I actually agree with what Vaush is saying over here, that she's getting a little bit inconsistent. And if I was debating Gavin on a film podcast, I would be screaming at the top of my lungs just for fun about how no, you said this. But it does seem that there is, like, again, a weird amount of vitriol. Like why is this of all things triggering him? I don't understand, Vaush. Vaush, why of all things is this making you angry? It seems relatively innocuous to me, to be honest.
Yeah, I do agree with that. I don't agree with a lot of Krystal's analysis of the film, to be honest. But yeah, just because we're lefties doesn't mean we have to be out here defending the Barbie movie and acting like we love it if we don't. Like, it's okay to be critical of it. And just because the right wing has decided to make it, their new fucking piñata to bash on in the culture war doesn't mean that we have to just react in a reactionary way, take the other position. That being said, as I've mentioned, I do think that Krystal's kind of off base here, but I don't think it's because she's a conservative.
The reason I'm pausing here specifically is because I want to make it clear this is how I identify a grifter. It's not when a person is wrong. Everyone is wrong except for me. A person is a grifter, or at least identifiable as one, when their arguments don't make sense or adhere to any consistent internal logic, because they're not deriving these positions from internal logic. They're deriving it from other things, like, say, economic considerations or popularity. These are no single human of.
Here's why that just doesn't fly, right? We had Griffin on, he works on breaking points, right? And he kind of laid it out, right? That this kind of a line of criticism isn't going to work for breaking points because they have structured their product in such a way that they are handicapping, their their actual output, right? Like he was talking about how they were doing, art, stories on used cars and like inflation and, the housing market and, esoteric bills that are going through Congress and like still, yes, talking about major cultural issues like Barbie, but they could be making so much money and they could be attracting so many more viewers if they were, I think he used the example of like talking about Bud Light and Dylan Mulvaney but any of those kinds of like hot button issues, right? And it's not like they're milking the Barbie thing. Like Krystal put out a review. It's part of her fucking job. She has to write a fucking radar, or not a radar, whatever, a point that's breaking, basically a radar, 3 times a week. This is what she wanted to write about. And I think somebody pointed out that, it's fair to add that she's coming at this a little bit more of the perspective of a parent, maybe somebody that wanted to take her daughter to see this movie and then realized that it wasn't the kind of movie for a daughter. I don't fucking know. We had a different reading of the movie, but I don't think that it's indicative of the fact that she's trying to court the right wing. You know what I mean? I also didn't really like the movie. I'm not giving it a resounding endorsement. And I wanted to add, Gavin, that I fucking hate when the left wing is like, if you don't like this movie, you're fucking not a left winger. Because I actually never, and it's not a contrarian thing, guys. I'm happy to be stoked that the left likes a good movie, but they never do pick the fucking right movies to be stoked about. I don't hear everybody waving their flags about how There Will Be Blood is a masterpiece of anti-capitalism. Then I'd be like, yeah, dude, that's my favorite movie ever. And I don't even hear them say Clerks is like a really good movie about like fucking like what it's like to be a working class person. I never get any of that. I get Everything Everywhere All at Once or like, some other movie. And I'm like,
their own mental faculties could arrive at these arguments in tandem and believe all of them at once. I feel like that applies to most people. It's true that everyone has a degree of inconsistency, but when you're excessively inconsistent in a manner which is so flagrant and blatant and obvious, and it all just happens to line up with what conservatives in your audience would want to hear, grifting. Can you guys stop talking about Kyle? I would love to talk about Kyle without seeing chat talk about Krystal, and Krystal without Kyle. I like, can you guys stop? Okay? My unironic answer for this is that love does crazy things. And I have no interest in evaluating the perceived...
It's so crazy to me that he is so convinced that Krystal Ball is some like crazy secret closet right winger that he's like, I don't know, dude. I'm not even going to speculate on their marriage. That's between them. I'm like, what? Like, you're not even going to be charitable enough to be like, wow, this guy that apparently you do respect and you do, believe in the lefty credentials, that you're not even going to take his vouching for her when they're married. Like, a little crazy, but I get it. Vaush. This is your late.
Yeah, Kyle has to come on Vaush's stream now and defend his wife's honor. He has to fight Vaush. Come on, man. You got to be a man. You got to step up.
He needs to Will Smith. He needs to fly to Seattle and give him the old Will Smith wallop.
Oh God, that would be trippy, honestly. If like your significant other was also in the same lane, and then one of your like kind of sort of friends of the show is just taking a fat shit, viciously attacking them, calling them a bitch, and you're just like, like I don't want to seem like a simp just coming out here to be like, I have to defend my wife, but also can't just let that go, right? You can't just let that go.
No. But I mean, I'm not gonna weigh into that fucking ethics. I just Vaush brought it up, and I was like, well, our job is to commentate.
Was no part of this. By the end, I just wanted it to be over.
I'm realizing I really think that this is also a difference in audience, because I was telling you, I watched it with a bunch of very raucous, drunk gays here in Washington.
There we go. Oh, Sauger's in the closet. He's way too well dressed. Always with the haircut, always with the beard trim. You know it.
DC, and they were loving the movie. They were
feeling the Kenergy.
They were feeling the Kenergy. A lot of the women who were in the audience are exactly the type who love like Lehman Fem. So I was just like, hey, it's almost you get caught up in the crowd. You're like, yeah, everyone's loving the jokes. Like they love the core message of it. So
I can't believe the first conservative I'm hearing acknowledge the fact that the movie is mostly being seen by adults is Sauger and Jetty. Jesus Christ. Seriously, the theater that I went to had a couple of girls, but it was filled with adults. And the movie felt fine to watch as an adult. Like I didn't feel like I was watching a kid's movie with jokes thrown in for adults. I felt like I was watching a movie that was just fine. I didn't feel patronized to.
Well, that's insane.
I guess I just didn't look even at it as political. I was like, yeah, generic center-left movie is going to be generic center-left. I enjoyed a lot of the Ken humor. I thought it was funny. Like,
that was the best part.
Wait,
hold up. Sagar on the money, because look, you know what? My girlfriend already dragged me. She was like, oh, like as a joke, right? She was like, stereotypical white male perspective. You only adapted to the jokes that were made by Ryan Gosling. No. I will say, I think he was a real showstopper, man, because nobody besides him had the timing, the fucking entire body. He was ripped as shit. I was jealous of him the whole movie, man. I was like, damn, this guy is more shredded than I will ever be. He's the perfect embodiment of a Ken doll. It was crazy. And he was fucking hilarious. You thought he was fucking hilarious.
Yeah, the thing about Ryan Gosling that people don't realize is that he is an incredibly gifted comedic actor. He doesn't do a lot of comedic work, but every once in a while he will pop up in like a more comedic film, like The Nice Guys, for example, which is a really underrated movie he was in with Russell Crowe. And in Barbie, he totally steals the show. Absolutely. Not that Margot Robbie isn't a very gifted performer with a great on-screen presence. She is, but I don't think she's nearly as funny as Ryan Gosling is. And yeah, I think he totally steals the show, not just because I'm a guy and he's the fucking Ken or whatever, but just because he's genuinely funny. And I did think that a lot of the humor when the Kens took over, I thought that was pretty good too. Kind of referencing some of like the manosphere culture and the super hardcore, like let's put pictures of tigers everywhere and all that kind of stuff. So I totally agree with Sagar that stuff was hilarious.
Dude,
I don't want to issue too many spoilers.
It's like the wraparound, man. Holy shit. Crystal's desperately, pathetically trying to appeal to the conservatives in their audience, and Sagar doesn't care enough to. So Krystal just lies about the movie for 10 minutes, and or 5 minutes, whatever. And then Sagar's like, I watched it. I thought it was pretty good. Watched it with some of the queers. Had a great time. It was pretty funny. Haha. Love that energy. And Krystal is like quietly seething because she's like, well, did I have to go that hard? Did I have to lie that much?
So if you haven't seen it, I recommend you.
I mean, I already did the whole plot of my thing.
Fair enough.
Spoiled already.
But just like some of the jokes, like the Ken dance off, or what else am I thinking of? Like the Mount Rushmore filled with horses. There were like intermittent laughs and all those things. I thought it was light, and I didn't find that it was plotting. I didn't think well, maybe because I saw Oppenheimer that morning. So anything
that could be
short. So I don't know. I saw it and I was like, huh, that was humorous. I wasn't like, I love this movie. It's the greatest movie I've ever seen. I was like, it was kind of fun. But I'm telling you, my audience was obsessed with this movie. Like, would not stop talking about it. That is
so funny because I'm telling you, there was about to be a revolt among the working class Black audience that brought their little girl.
Oh, yeah. The working class. Oh, my fuck God. It's so transparent. Yeah. That's right. Krystal went to the theater.
This is left reality at this point. He's made up his mind, and anything this woman does, he's going to interpret as whatever the fuck is the justification for his argument here. I'm sorry, Vaush, but this is poor debating. This is bad performance. You were working with the facts for a while and getting carried away, but at this point, it's disintegrated into you're off base here, pal.
With a working class Black audience with their children, and she, as a real progressive populist, she saw. With all her brothers and sisters, I think she could fairly say, with all her homies from the hood, as she would be allowed to say from them, her good friends, that they were.
Now he's barking up an entirely separate tree that I don't even think he knows about. But this is talk about a disintegration. Now I know why Gavin was like, no, dude, we got to let this play.
We're all really mad, So actually, when she regurgitates conservative arguments that Sagar Enjeti hilariously doesn't reflect himself, she can go, oh, right, well, all of my Ben Shapiro tier arguments were from the working class Black families I saw Barbie with. Yeah, she flew to the south side of Chicago to see Barbie. She was over there in East LA.
Vaush does not know there's Black people in Virginia. What the fuck? Dude, DC has a fuckload of Black people, dude. What the fuck? DC is a famously Black city. Vaush, you have no idea what you're talking about when you leave your bubble of LA. Oh my God.
Just having a grand old time. She didn't make the classic mistake. She didn't bring any beans, so she couldn't drop them when a Black teenager says she's eating beans,
This is ridiculous, dude. This is ridiculous. I mean, it's baffling for somebody who studied politics for so long to not know that so much of DC has been historically Black, and how there was so much racism in DC. And also like the legendary Dave Chappelle stand-up Killing Them Softly. He talks all about how crazy DC got during the crack era. I'm just telling you guys, there was so much fucking like they made it like they sectioned off Washington, D.C. so all the white people would live in one area because there was so much fucking war on drugs activity in D.C., right? And then they got all of the like minority communities, right? And they shoved them to the other end of the city. And it was like Georgetown and the Hill. And then everything else was like, you know, deeply impoverished, or at least that's the way like people, you know, zhuzh it up to be. I didn't live there. But long story short, there's a lot of political history involving that, you know. And for him to just completely ignore that and then also pretend that no black people live in that city, like that's crazy.
Is Krystal a grifter or is she just dumb? She's a grifter. I don't think she's dumb.
Girls there.
Yeah.
And I'm talking, there were tiny kids. There were, you know, little girls of all ages.
I could 100% see that.
And also a mom. So I would have, I think, because I wouldn't have paid close attention. It's PG-13 is the rating. I wouldn't have paid close attention. I would have been like, it's probably fine, you know, and I'd.
Oh my God. Dude, how can you? The whole point of the rating board is to give you can what how is this the movie's fault? This is this is the attitude that like drag queens shouldn't be allowed to perform in adult only bars extrapolated to movies, where it's not enough to keep like kids safe, quote unquote, you know, massive finger quotes there. But we need to like destroy all elements of social sexuality that are considered deviant, because there might hypothetically be a child that was deliberately.
All right. I do actually kind of agree with Vaush here. I don't necessarily think Krystal was intentionally kind of channeling the like Puritan argument that Vaush is referencing, but I do think her arguments towards this film at multiple points in the review came across that way. I honestly do. And she kind of talks about, well, this is like a kid's movie. And I was so shocked that there was all these sex jokes. And I'm so glad, I don't know if we're going to get to this point, but she says, I'm so glad I didn't bring my kid. I almost did bring my kid and I didn't. Thank God I didn't, because I was sitting here horrified watching this movie in a theater with children in it while they were making jokes referencing masturbation. They said the word vagina. And I'm like, this is all very innocuous. I'm sorry, but I saw the film, and if I had seen the film as a 13-year-old, I would have been able to handle it. I'm sorry, I would have been able to handle it. If I was a parent, I would much rather them see Barbie than other much more violent PG-13 rated films like The Dark Knight, for example, a movie I referenced earlier, which is incredibly dark, grapples with very mature themes, and which depicts violence in a very disturbing way. Again, that film is also PG-13. No one would assume that it's a kid's movie necessarily, maybe one that more mature kids can enjoy, but nonetheless, no one would make the mistake of calling it a kid's movie. And I do think that Krystal kind of played into some of those arguments, acting like the fact that there were sex jokes in the movie and references to vaginas is somehow offensive or somehow like morally objectionable, which I didn't think so at all. I thought the film was totally innocuous in that regard. And the fear mongering that I've seen around it is really ridiculous. People trying to say that like, oh, this kid's movie is actually, you know, just full of adult humor and adult references to sex. It's not a kid's movie. It's not a kid's movie. And if you didn't understand that, if you didn't do your research as a moviegoer and you brought your kid or something, that's your fucking fault. I'm sorry, but it is. It's not the movie's fault. And I don't want to live in a society where we have a culture of people who get outraged because a piece of popular entertainment makes jokes about sex. That is Puritanism, in my opinion. And I don't think it's a remotely valid criticism of this movie.